All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we've got a really wild one for you. It's an environmental puzzle, a paradox really, that puts two continents on completely opposite sides when it comes to, well, a single, very fluffy animal.
Okay, so get this. On one side of the planet, you've got Australia, where there are literally 200 million rabbits. They're considered such a destructive pest that the government officially calls them a plague. But then you hop over to China, and for the last 30 years, they've been importing millions of these same rabbits, and not as pests, no, as partners.
So how is that even possible? How can the exact same animal be a total plague in one place and an ecological savior in another? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unravel today. And trust me, the answer, it's a powerful lesson about nature, human ingenuity, and how sometimes the biggest problems are actually opportunities in disguise.
To really get to the bottom of this, we first have to go to China and understand the sheer scale of the problem they were up against. I mean, we're talking about a landscape so hostile, its nickname was the Sea of Death.
So the big bad guy in this story is something called desertification. It's that process where perfectly good, fertile land just turns into desert. And in China, the #1 victim of this was the Kabuki Desert, which happens to be the 7th largest desert in the whole country.
And this wasn't some slow, gradual thing. No, this was a relentless invasion. Every single year, 500,000 acres of good farmland, that's about the size of a major city, was just being swallowed whole by the sand. The government tried a few things early on, but they all failed. The desert just kept on coming.
So with the government kind of at a loss, this local entrepreneur, a guy named Weng Wenbiao, he steps in with what seemed like a totally wild, almost crazy idea. He looked at this sea of death and decided he was going to fight it. With trees.
And his method was just beautiful in its simplicity, but so clever. Step 1. He had his teams create these big grids out of dry bushes, almost like a net, to hold the shifting sand in place. That stopped the crazy winds from just blowing everything away. Then, for step 2, inside those little protected squares, they planted hardy willow trees. And these weren't just any trees. This species can send its roots an incredible 300 feet straight down to find water.
You can probably guess what happened next, right? People laughed at him. They literally called him a fool for, well, throwing his money into the sand. But then, slowly and pretty miraculously, the plan actually started to work. The trees, they took root. But just when it seemed like they were turning a corner, a brand new, really expensive problem popped up.
Okay, so here's the thing. For these willow trees to actually be valuable for making paper, you have to constantly trim off all the new thin shoots that pop up. See, that forces the main trunk to grow thick and strong. But just think about it. How do you send work crews into the middle of a massive, remote desert to prune millions and millions of tiny tree shoots? It was a logistical and financial nightmare.
And this is where our story takes that really fascinating turn we talked about. The solution to this huge industrial problem, it wasn't some new machine. It wasn't a bigger workforce. Nope, it was an animal. And not just any animal, specifically the Rex rabbit. Now, this breed was chosen for a couple of key reasons. First, they have a natural habit that was just perfect for the job at hand. And second, well, they're famous for their incredibly soft, super valuable fur. The kind you see in high-end luxury clothing. And this is where the absolute genius of this whole plan just clicks into place. See, the rabbits didn't just solve that one pruning problem. They kicked off this incredible self-sustaining cycle that was both ecological and economic. I mean, think about it. 1, they provided free pruning because they loved to eat the exact new shoots that needed to go. 2, their waste became a natural fertilizer factory, slowly turning that dead sand into living soil. 3, they couldn't digest grass seeds, so they became little seed spreaders, planting new vegetation wherever they went completely for free. And 4, that valuable fur, it created a whole new industry for the local people. It's just a perfect system.
So what happens when you let this rabbit-powered green engine just run for 30 years? Well, the transformation is nothing short of staggering. It's absolutely incredible.
Get this, a full 1/3 of that Sea of Death, we're talking over 6,000 square kilometers of it, has been reclaimed. It's been turned green. What was once a totally barren wasteland is now a thriving, living ecosystem. And this victory wasn't just environmental, not by a long shot. The project created thousands of jobs, it built new farms, it lifted over 100,000 people out of deep poverty. You have families who are once literally fleeing the desert who are now becoming prosperous because of it. The whole dynamic just flipped.
And that right there, that brings us back to our big mystery from the beginning. The difference between a plague and a miracle. It's not the animal, it's the system you put the animal in. In Australia, the rabbits were just let loose in an uncontrolled environment with no predators and no real purpose. So of course they multiplied like crazy. But in Kabuki, they were introduced into a carefully managed system where their natural instincts served a whole bunch of specific, important jobs.
But believe it or not, the story doesn't even end there. Just when you think this project can't possibly get any smarter, they add this stunning, almost futuristic twist that brings clean energy into the whole equation.
So what started as a local success story, well, it evolved. It became a model, a blueprint that could potentially be used anywhere on the planet.
Okay, so what did they do? They built a massive solar farm right on top of the reclaimed land. We're talking nearly 5 million solar panels, all arranged in the shape of a galloping horse, which, by the way, holds a Guinness World Record. But the coolest part is that this farm does so much more than just make electricity.
And this is another one of those perfect loop systems. Every single part works with the others. The solar panels create shade, which reduces water evaporation, which helps grass grow underneath them. Then the rabbits are brought in to mow that grass and, fertilize it. The whole structure, the panels and the grass, also reduces the wind speed by half, which stops the sand from blowing around and starting the problem all over again. It's green energy, agriculture, and land restoration all working in perfect synergy.
And this is why this amazing story from a remote desert in China really matters to every single one of us. Because desertification isn't just a local problem, it's a massive global crisis. Right now, it's threatening the land and the livelihoods of billions of people all over the world.
So it really makes you think, right? If we can turn an actual sea of death into an oasis that's full of life and clean energy, what other so-called wastelands out there are just waiting for their own clever solution? The Kabuki model proves that with the right kind of creative thinking, that line between a huge problem and an elegant solution can be way thinner than we imagine. It shows us that we can design systems where humans and nature work together, not just to stop destruction, but to actually create abundance and opportunity where it seemed totally impossible.